Who doesn't love cinnamon rolls right from the oven? These yummy cinnamon rolls made with Bisquick are perfect with that first coffee in the morning. Or maybe whip up a batch to serve to your girlfriends when they come over. Either way, you'll really love this Bisquick cinnamon roll recipe. So when the sweet roll cravings hit, this easy to make recipe that doesn't require yeast, and we're going to make it together. Hi, it's great to see you. I'm Grandma Judy, and I bake easy desserts, offer baking tips, and show you how to make delicious pies. You know, I've only been making pies, well, sounds like a long time, but about 30 years. I wasn't one of those bakers who started at 5 years old. Absolutely not. And really, it was all about baking pies then, and I've only just started exploring desserts and how to make them easy in about the last 10 years since I started my blog, Pie Lady Bakes. Easy desserts, pies, and baking tips. Doesn't get much better than that. Now, just in case you don't have any Bisquick mix or biscuit baking mix in your pantry, we're going to make a homemade version before we get started. So to get started, we need a small food processor. And if you don't have one of these little workhorses, I really recommend that you get one. I'll put the link down below so you can get it. You can make puree salads, and I even make pie crust in this, and I'm actually going to do a video very soon showing you how to do that. But for today, we're going to make our own homemade biscuit mix. So we'll start out with flour. I like to use unbleached flour. I just think it sounds better than bleached. So I have 4 cups already measured into the bin of the food processor. Always make sure it's locked. And then we're going to add the rest. So that's 6 cups. That's really full, I know, but it'll be fine. And if not, we'll have a really big mess. So we need 3 tablespoons of baking soda, baking powder, 3 tablespoons of baking powder. Don't use soda. And make sure that it hasn't expired. Check the expiry. It's usually on the bottom. So 3 tablespoons. 2, 3. And this makes a lot. This makes about between 6 and 7 cups of baking biscuit mix or Bisquick. And a tablespoon of salt. Yes. You can put a little less salt in if you want. I usually do. And before we add the shortening, I'm going to pulse these dry ingredients together. So you want to make sure that your lid is on tight and you hear the lock. And then my small food processor has a pulse button. Okay, and it's really loud. I'll put a link in the description below. A few years ago, I actually did a review of food processors and what I felt were the best ones, and that offered the best value. So you can check that out too. So the last thing, and there's really just a few ingredients in this homemade Bisquick, is the shortening. I always keep my shortening at room temperature. I don't know. That's just me, but I think you can keep it in the refrigerator. Had a senior moment there. So I just add it in chunks. You know, you don't have to be perfect with this. They don't have to be little cubes like you sometimes see. Nothing wrong with that, but you really don't need to. What I like about homemade mixes like this one is that So many of us these days are sensitive to chemicals or, artificial ingredients. Maybe not chemicals, that may be not the right word. Okay. That's what the apron's for, I guess. So we're going to put the bin on. I'm going to mix it up, and when we come back, I'll show you exactly the right texture for this baking mix to have. As it's blending, you might need to open the bin. Make sure you turn it off, open the bin, and maybe just push some of the flour. It's biscuit mix now, but I just thought I would use my knife because the pressure pushes the flour and the mixture up against the lid. That's because we really filled this. And if you wanted to, you could split the recipe, but you really don't need to. Okay, we're locked in again. And you can see how the flour and shortening and baking powder and salt have blended together, and you've got these little peas of baking mix now all the way around, so that when you take it in your hand, there's your homemade baking mix. So we're all ready. I'm going to jar this because I think I only need a cup or maybe a cup and a half in my recipe, and the rest can go in the refrigerator. And for this recipe, we're going to need 2.5 cups for the Bisquick cinnamon rolls. So there's a half. And I need 2 more. Turned out really well. It's nice and clumpy. All of the shortening has mixed in. 1 and 2. Sorry, you can't really see, can you? So that's 2.5 cups, and we'll use that for the cinnamon rolls. I'll put that to the side. And I just have a mason jar that was in the cupboard. So the rest of it, I'll put in the mason jar. I won't make you watch all of that. And it can store in the refrigerator, sealed, putting the mason jar lid on it, for about 3 months. Mix the sugar and cinnamon in a small bowl and set aside. Mix 2.5 cups of the biscuit mix into a large bowl. Pour in the coffee cream and another 2 tablespoons of white sugar. And then mix it all up. You'll end up with a nice thick dough. Using a pastry mat, dust it with flour, and then bring your cinnamon bun dough out onto the mat and start to shape it. Make sure you get all the good bits. Fold it over and work it a little bit with your hands, just until it gets soft. You might need to add a little more flour to the pastry mat. And you can also put flour on top of the dough itself. It'll make rolling easier. And then using your hands, just shape it into a nice square shape, or maybe like a rectangle. And then using your rolling pin, start to roll it out. Don't be in a hurry, just take nice, even strokes. You'll see I'm using a French rolling pin here. I find these so easy to use, and they're really inexpensive, and I'll put a link in the description below. Then just turn the dough sideways and start rolling it again. We want to end up with a nice big rectangle. About 14 by 9 inches if you can get it there. But don't worry if it's not exact. And you can see how I rolled it. You can see how I rolled over that edge of dough. Okay, now we take 2.5 tablespoons of butter. It's very soft, so you can just spread it over the dough with your fingers. And make sure you push the butter out to the edges so that the pastry, cinnamon roll pastry, is completely covered with the butter. It's kind of like finger painting with butter, really, on the pastry. But you'll see why in a few minutes. And then just sort of push it in on the edges. We're still going for a rectangle shape. There, that looks pretty good. So mix up the cinnamon and sugar that you initially put together at the beginning and just spread it so that it covers the entire surface. Doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as you use all of that yummy sugar and cinnamon. Next, we sprinkle on the raisins. And just try to distribute them evenly across the cinnamon roll pastry. It's looking pretty good already. Okay, so very carefully start to roll the pastry upwards. You want to keep it fairly tight because when the cinnamon buns bake, they'll expand, of course, in the oven. And try to keep those ends as straight as you can, because that will help when you slice the individual cinnamon rolls. And it's nice because putting all that flour on the pastry mat kept it from sticking. But if it does stick, don't worry. You can just use a spatula or a dull knife to loosen it. Okay, let's get ready and slice our cinnamon rolls. You don't need to use a ruler to measure. I kind of did, but you don't have to. So once they're all sliced, we're going to put them in a 9 or an 8-inch square pan, and we're going to spread the tops with melted butter and bake. So now let's do the glaze. After you sift the powdered sugar, mix in 4 to 6 tablespoons of milk. You want to get a really creamy consistency, something that you're going to be able to spread once the cinnamon rolls are baked. So now the cinnamon rolls are out of the oven and the fun begins. Make sure that the rolls have cooled just a tiny little bit because you want that warmth to spread all that wonderful glaze all over the buns. Looks pretty good, right? Oh my gosh. I know you're gonna love these. They break apart so easily, and you can actually get 9 fairly generous servings out of this recipe, or maybe 4 huge servings. Bisquick cinnamon rolls. Delicious, easy to make, and just look at that yummy frosting. But we're not finished baking. Coming up next, lots of great pie recipes.